Assalamualaikum everyone, and welcome to our last talk of the evening. My name is Shafiq Ludin, and I am the Youth Director here at Noor Islamic Cultural Center. Before we begin with introducing our speakers, I would like to introduce the team behind planning this conference and prepping for this year's youth conference, the My Impact Committee. On the My Impact team, I lead the Finance Committee. Rida.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Rida. I'm the Youth Coordinator at NICC and I lead the Marketing Committee.
Khalid.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Khalid. I am a NICC Youth Department board member, and on the My Impact Committee, I lead the Logistics Committee.
Hanya.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Hanya. I'm a senior at Hilliard Davidson, and I am currently head of the Marketing Committee.
Misha.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Misha. I am a junior at Worthington Kilbourne High School and I am on the Marketing Committee.
Mariam.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Mariam Abaza. I'm a sophomore at Dublin Jerome High School and I'm on the Marketing Committee.
Riham.
Salam. My name is Riham. I'm a sophomore at Dublin Scioto High School, and in My Impact, I am a part of the Marketing Committee.
Doreen.
Salam, my name is Dareen. I'm a freshman at Metro Early College High School and I'm a part of the Marketing Committee.
Leanne.
Salam, my name is Nayan. I'm a junior at Hilliard Davidson High School and I'm on the Finance Committee of My Impact.
Aya.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Ayabora. I'm a freshman at Metro Early College High School, and I'm part of the Finance My Impact.
Hind.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Hind Muhammad. I'm a freshman at Metro Early College High School, and I'm a part of the finance team.
Khadija.
Salam, my name is Khadija Diallo. I'm a part of the logistic team, and I'm a freshman at Metro Early College High School.
Aisha.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Aisha Pureboy, and I am a current high school senior at Hilliard Darby. And I am part of the Logistics Committee at My Impact.
Saad.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Saad. I'm a sophomore at Hilliard Davidson, and I'm part of the Logistics Committee.
And last but not least, Sama.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Sama. I am a senior at Dublin Scioto High School and I'm also part of the Logistics Committee. I just want to also extend my thanks and appreciation for all members of the My Impact Committee. But now let's move on to our final session of the conference, inshallah. Tonight we are joined by Sister Bilqis Abdul Qadir and Sister Noor Abu Karam for the session Power of Youth, Shaking the Present, Shaping the Future. Sister Bilqis is a basketball player who broke barriers as the first hijabi and first Muslim woman to play basketball at the collegiate level for the University of Memphis. After her professional career was cut short due to a hijab ban, she raised her voice and was able to overturn that rule, paving the way for future hijabi athletes. Sister Noor Abu Karam is a senior at the Bounty Collegium where she runs cross country. During a cross-country meet her junior year, she was disqualified for wearing a hijab. Her story quickly went viral after she spoke out against the incident and was featured on the Washington Post, the New York Times, Good Morning America, Time Magazine, AJ+, CNN, and more. Her experience led to a change in the Ohio High School Athletic Association's policy regarding the hijab and religious headscarf coverings. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming these change makers.
So either one of you guys can begin. Bilqis,
Noor, what do you want to do, Noor? You or me? What's going on? Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Like they were saying, I'm Noor Abu Karam. I would like to begin by thanking you all for having me today. So if you don't know much about my story, I would first like to set the tone for you all. So in the summer of 2019, my mother and her best friend prepared vigorously for the Detroit Half Marathon. And every morning they would go out and run, averaging about 30 miles each week. This inspired me and my sister Sinian to explore the sport further. We took on this new endeavor together on top of our already busy schedule, which included soccer, school, fashion design, and so much more. Running quickly became a way of life, a sense of community, and most of all, a means of leaving my troubles behind. Several weeks later, in October of 2019, it was the cross country district invitational. My team and I went to the starting line to get checked in as usual. They checked our jerseys and accessories to make sure no one was violating the uniform, and everything went smoothly. I cleared my head and stepped up to the starting line ready to race. After one of the hardest races of my life, I achieved a personal record. My teammates and I celebrated, learning that we qualified for regionals. We rushed to check our individual placings, and I ran my finger down the list and quickly noticed that my name was not on the scoreboard next to my teammates. I was certain it was just a typo. My teammates then looked at me in all seriousness and told me that I had been disqualified. I laughed and asked for what, and one of the girls said, because of your hijab. Because of your hijab. These are 4 words I never thought I would hear. Cross country was a means for me to leave my troubles behind. Ironically, this felt like the complete opposite. Full of emotions, I wanted to hide away in my room and let the time pass. I was humiliated to be around my teammates and to even speak to my family about what had happened. I remember people telling me that I should tell my story on a social platform, which wasn't something that I was fully comfortable with at the time. But then my older sister reminded me that our younger sister's journey in athletics has just begun, and that her being the next hijabi athlete in the Abu Karam household, she and all future minority athletes will have to endure the same type of discrimination that I have dealt with. Considering this, I put my own feelings aside and decided to tell my story. My experience quickly gained global uproar. Since then, my unique circumstance suddenly became a common reality. I received many messages from people around the world who had faced similar discrimination. I heard about stories like Bilqis's. I came to the realization that most athletes who face discrimination do not have the opportunity to share their experiences the way I did. So this empowered me to start the Let No Run initiative, which aims to fight discrimination and injustices that hinder us from doing what we love. For as long as I can remember, my life has always revolved around athletics. It has been a testament to who I am as a person, and hijabi athletes like myself deserve to embrace sport without feeling disregarded in any way, including the clothing we choose to wear. So I fought diligently for my right to run in a hijab and worked with Ohio State Senator Gavarone to pass Senate Bill 288, which prohibits organizations from implementing discriminatory policies in extracurricular activities. So this will prohibit situations like my own from happening to anyone else in Ohio again, but this was just the beginning. We hosted our Let No Run kickoff event in January 2020, which aimed to host different dialogues within the sports community to further educate and shed light on discrimination in sports. That's actually where I met Bilqis. And today we are hosting our first ever virtual run/walk in collaboration with the Toledo Public Schools diversity team. So that way the sports hijabs purchased during the 5K will be distributed to the sports departments of local inner city schools, creating a more inclusive environment. And it was after all of this that I finally understood the power that we have in our voices and stories, and the role that I'm playing to fight injustices. But it's not just my role or Bilqis's. It's all of our duty to understand the power your voice could have and the change you could impact. Since the cross-country invitational, in 2019, I ultimately understood the magnitude of storytelling and dialogue. Telling my story may have seemed minute at the time, but as my dialogue continued to get shared, so many others could relate. And this gave me the opportunity not only to help myself, but to guide the next generation to realize and recognize their ability to inspire change. Sorry. No matter how great the odds are stacked against them. Thank you.
Sorry, I think Bilqis is having a little bit technical difficulties. Let's just give her a second.
Assalamualaikum. I'm still here. It's just that. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me good? My internet was saying it's unstable, so I was gonna try to log in on my phone. I'm sorry.
You're all good.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First off, of course, just want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us all to be here tonight for such a wonderful event. Honestly, Noor, you know how much I love you and respect you. You all don't know, but Noor is an inspiration to I'm older than her. She is an inspiration to me. Just the courage and the bravery at, I think you were what, 15 or initially happened, to stand up and make like change in a whole state at this point for America, for our country at that age is amazing. When I went through my situation, I was way older and I'm not sure if I would have been able to do it. So Noor, thank you for the work that you do. I applaud you, I respect you, and I love you as a sister in Islam and for my own sake. So you all, please, please show her the love that she deserves while you can, mashallah. May Allah continue to guide you and protect you and keep you on a purposeful path. So I guess I'm gonna kind of start off from the beginning of my journey in my life. So I was born and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is the birthplace of basketball. Not many people know that. I'm the youngest of 8. I have 4 sisters and 3 brothers, and we were pretty much like a basketball family. And of course, growing up in a city where basketball was a sport, it was just innate for me to pick up the ball. And I like to say that when my mother was pregnant with me, she was like a basketball junkie. So when she was at games, I'm pretty sure when I was hearing the basketball being bounced and whistles being blown when I was in the womb, like I came out like, where's the ball? And so growing up in an inner city like Springfield, especially as, you know, a black youth, the opportunities are very, very slim. And I say that because the schools are underfunded. The opportunities that we're presented with aren't always as good as the others. And oftentimes we have to make a way for ourselves. And what we're often given is either sport or entertainment. And honestly, that's just it. So growing up, of course, sport was huge in our family. I knew that sport was going to be almost a way out, right? And when I mean a way out of poverty, a way to pursue a higher education and really just make change for your family. So again, I'm the youngest of 8. I started playing basketball when I was around 4 years old, 4 or 5. I got my first basketball hoop. It was amazing. It was the one that we all probably have that you can adjust up and down and comes with the rubber ball. And it started in my dining room. And my brothers who were right above me in the lineup, they would get on their knees and they would act as they were the same height as me and they would just bully me at my own hoop. And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, leave me alone, let me play. But I learned later on that I needed that, and they made me so much of a better player, and I needed it, you know. So I realized later on in life that, okay, my brothers bullied me for a good reason. So anyway, 5 years old, I start playing, and I'm homeschooled. So I would play in community centers growing up, and at that time there weren't a lot of girls who played. So I played with the boys all the way up until I was around 12 or 13. And it's so funny because when I would go to like the local neighborhoods, courts, and I'll be like, I have next, you know, and the boys are looking at me like, yeah, right. Like, what is she doing here? And finally, when it was my turn to play, I would have to show these boys up, right? Because they thought I was a joke. So as soon as I made a shot or crossed somebody over, they're like, somebody guard the girl, you suck, let me guard her. So they would actually rotate all 5 boys on their team to see who was going to be able to stop me. And nobody was able to stop me, right? And so when I would go back to these courts, I gained that respect. So as soon as they saw me, they're like, Kisi, you want to play on my team? And I'm like, nah, I already have a team. So it was funny that, you know, you had to gain that kind of respect being the only girl a lot of times on these outdoor courts or on the teams that I played on. So I remember at around 12 or 13, my parents having like a really serious conversation with me. And they were basically like, look, Kisi, we can't afford college. So you're going to have to figure out a way to potentially help us pay for it. And I knew they were, you know, talking about getting a scholarship. And I knew that you could get one academically, but I also know it was a bit easier to get one athletically. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at basketball. I know that I need to be a really, really great player in order to get a full scholarship. I mean, that's athletically, it's not easy. It's not that easy either, but I knew that alhamdulillah, I was blessed with this talent. Why not try to use it? So I remember writing that down in this little diary that I had. And it's funny because I just found it a few years ago. And I wrote down, I'm going to be a Division I athlete on a full scholarship. And so that was my goal from that day forward. And I mean, normal 12-year-olds shouldn't even be thinking about helping your parents financially, you know. And it wasn't like my parents are trying to put a burden on me or give me this huge responsibility, but they were just being honest. And again, I'm the youngest of 8. They were already paying for tuition out of pocket for my other siblings. And so I'm like, I don't want to see my parents struggle anymore, you know? So I grinded. And when the hashtag ball is life, like that was legit. That was me. Like ball was life. I actually slept with the ball some nights. Like I just needed to feel it. I needed to know how it moved, what I needed. It was funny. And I even would practice my shot in my bed. So I would hit the ceiling sometimes and get in trouble for it. But at all times I'm thinking, all right, I have to get better. I have to get better. And so I was finally sent to public school. My parents decided, I was old enough to go ahead and step into that environment. So I went to a very small public charter school in Springfield, and I went as an 8th grader. And so the type of school that I went to, middle schoolers were allowed to try out for high school teams. And it was like a no-brainer for me. Like, absolutely, I'm trying out for the varsity team, And it's funny, back then, I guess we've all kind of experienced homeschool in some way. But when I first went to school, people thought homeschooled kids were like weird. But thankfully, I played on sports teams and I had that social aspect that I wasn't, really socially awkward. So I knew that I had to somewhat, fit in, and basketball was kind of my way. So I tried out for the team. Alhamdulillah, I make the team. And I was the youngest and the smallest on the team. And I was so small that the jersey number that I really wanted was 10, but I had to wear number 1 because that was like the extra, extra small. So I was stuck with number 1 my entire high school career because I was the smallest. But I ended up, making that varsity team. And disclaimer, the girls on the team, that was like their first time ever playing basketball. So it wasn't like I was just this amazing, phenomenal player. It was like the other girls never touched the ball in their life. So my first game as an 8th grader, I scored over like 40 points. And the city went wild. They're like, who is this girl? Where did she come from? And this is really what I needed. I needed this publicity so that getting a scholarship would be easier, and I would basically be a household name for my city and state. So I remember making the newspaper and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like coaches are going to find out about me. And it was also just cool to be in a newspaper coming from homeschool. And so I'm like, okay, I want to be in a newspaper like every game. So at that point, I'm like, I'm going to try to score as many points as I can. I'm going to try. It was, I mean, thinking back, I was kind of not full of myself, but I was like, I wanted to make the newspaper, right? And we were winning games. And this was the first time that this high school team actually was winning games. So alhamdulillah, it was really, really fun. And again, I just loved the game. It was this peace, you know, it brought me that peace that I needed. So 8th grade was amazing. Then freshman year rolls around. And freshman year is when I began wearing hijab. And so in my household, both of my parents converted to Islam. And the way my parents learned Islam, it was strictly like Quran and Sunnah, right? There was no culture involved. There was no like extra baggage where something will override our beliefs. And so in my household, you know, we practice wearing hijab. As soon as you reach the age of womanhood, you reach puberty, there was no questions asked, you're wearing your hijab. And so I remember when it all happened and I thought my life was over. I was like, this is the worst thing that ever could have happened to me. And it was interesting because at the age of 14, the hijab, we all know how the hijab is a huge step. And at that time, I didn't really understand how beautiful it was. I didn't understand why Allah, you know, wanted us to protect ourselves in certain ways. I just wanted to blend in. You know, I was starting to kind of feel like I was beautiful. I was doing my hair in certain ways. And then it's funny how Allah works. He's like, nope, let's slow down. Let's, you know, it was honestly a protection at the right time. But of course, I didn't see it that way. It probably took me about a week and a half to go back to school. Every morning, my mother's waking me up. Kisi, are you ready? I'm like, not today. I was like, at this point, homeschool me again. I'm not going back. And I was so fearful of what people were going to say about me, you know, all these negative thoughts. But when I finally went back, it wasn't that bad. And really, I put too much pressure on myself. But even through that struggle, basketball was where I found, again, that, I don't know, feeling accepted, you know? And when I stepped on the court in my new garb, hijab, sweatpants, at the time there was no dry fit material, there was no sport hijab, there was no such thing. I was literally in a full sweatsuit, basically. Like I was almost some games about to pass out because it was just, I was hot. Like honestly, I was hot. And regardless of the people who laughed and made jokes about me, I'm like, go ahead and laugh because we're about to win this game and I'm going to score as many points as I can to beat you guys. Like I use that as fuel, you know, and it was rough sometimes. I mean, I would be taking the ball out, fan section behind me, and they would yell out all types of things. Like the worst joke of all was I looked like Osama bin Laden's niece. And I was like, who even knows who his niece looks like? Or what his niece? It was terrible, but these were the things that kids were saying, you know, at that time. And again, I just used it as fuel. And I knew that my team was, you know, supported me, my coaches supported me. So whenever those types of situations happened, I had that love and support and really that protection. So kind of speed through high school, mashallah, I broke some records. I made a name for myself. And again, I was really considered like the first hijabi basketball player I know within my state and then in neighboring states as well. So I get it. It looked weird. It looked funny, but people, honestly, the same people who would make jokes and laugh during the game would be the same people who would come up to me after the game and ask questions like, you know, first off, you're a great player. And may I ask why you have to cover? Because people really just didn't know about Muslim women, you know, or Islam in general. So I realized, I'm like, man, there's beauty in what's going on here. I was able to break stereotypes and educate people just by playing basketball, you know, and it was like, I was able to kind of fulfill my duty, one of my duties as a Muslim and spread dawah and give, you know, and educate. So I took that and kind of made it a positive. I get that full scholarship to a Division I school, alhamdulillah, and, you know, I make my family proud. College, of course, is a different environment. I struggled throughout college, basketball wise, identity wise, Islamic wise, and I matured I matured a lot throughout college. For those who are freshmen, and it's different now, COVID is involved, so you're not really on campus, but in college, I had to make a lot of hard choices, throughout my team, doing the parties and the drinking and this, like being a Muslim in that environment was hard. And alhamdulillah, like Allah protected me in a lot of situations, but I learned a lot about myself going through, that phase. So I get to being good enough to play professionally. And I have an agent, and an agent is a person who basically not sells you, but gets you a good contract with a country under the FIBA or foreign leagues or international leagues, I'm sorry. And so one day, we're talking about potential countries that I want to play in. And she's like, there's a rule that FIBA has in regards to headgear. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, well, it shouldn't be, the rules stated that it shouldn't be larger than an athletic headband. And I'm like, okay, no problem. I'm Muslim. I've been wearing my hijab for this amount of time. Like, it's no biggie. So we kind of let FIBA know who I am, what I've been wearing. And we sent them a picture and all that type of stuff. And FIBA kind of responds saying they want to keep the game religiously neutral. And I'm like, okay, well, people with, we were trying to think of something. We're like, well, people with tattoos of biblical scriptures or crosses or whatever faith they practice or believe in, shouldn't they have to wear some type of sleeve or whatever it is to cover that up? Because that's also religious freedom, And so they knew that we kind of made a point. And so then FIBA goes, oh, well, you know what? Really, the scarf is a safety hazard or a safety risk or whatever and we were like, wait, what? Like, basically, you're saying that I can hurt somebody with my hijab. Makes no sense. And at the time that I wore it, it wasn't free flowing. It was tied up around my hair. There was no pins. I didn't have any weapons inside of it. And I'm like, what do you think? It's going to like magically unravel, trip up the other player so I could make an easy layup? Like, it just didn't make sense. And that's when we realized it had to be some type of discrimination because they've never seen a Muslim woman playing basketball and fully covered, and a lot of people fear what they don't know. And we really didn't even know why they wouldn't even try to work with me. Like, okay, send me a video of you playing so we can see that I'm not causing any harm to myself or anyone else. And so at that moment, okay, they said safety. And when you say safety in sport, it's so hard to get around it. Like anything that's a safety risk, you can't really argue in sport. So we were kind of stuck. And at that time, I had 3 months to figure out or to hopefully change this rule so that I could play. So when you go to play professionally, you want to join the team before the season actually starts. Season starts in September. Here I am in June or July, or I'm sorry, May. So, okay, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to email whoever I can, trying to get in touch with certain people. FIBA never responded back. Those 3 months goes by. And here I am kind of left trying to figure out what life is like. What do I do? And I'm at a crossroad at this point because I realized that basketball was no longer in my future, and not even by choice. And that's, I think, what stung the most. And when you're passionate about something and you love something, and that orange ball had actually given me an opportunity, right? I was able to actually help my family get a higher education, all because of that basketball. And that connection I had was really strong. Again, like ball was life, and here I am really receiving different advice from people like, are you sure you can't just go play? Can't you take it off for a little while? But the piece of advice that really stuck to me was, and I felt like made sense to me at that time was, well, why don't you just take the scarf off and then put it during the game, put it back on after the game, and like move on. And so of course my response was, no, you know, the hijab means more than that. It's a part of me, is this, but honestly, I didn't really feel it in my heart. Like I was just given that textbook answer that we should give as a Muslim, right? And behind closed doors, I was like, why not? Like I would be in a country where nobody knows me. 40 minutes, the game is not that long. You know, Allah will forgive me. You know, these are the thoughts that I'm having, almost like Shaitan was like, there, just come on, you can do it, you can do it. But honestly, like something in my heart wouldn't allow me to. And I remember, you know, questioning everything about Islam, questioning Allah, like, why is he doing this to me? Like, why do I deserve this? You know, I was trying to be the best Muslim I could be, but where really was I? You know, or was I just, I fell into this image of the Muslim girl who hoops. Or, you know, at that time, I was one of the only hijabis in sport in general. And so it was nice to have this image and, you know, be seen and be recognized. And it was, in a way, I was kind of using that image, you know? And so I remember being in this space where I was, of course, questioning everything, and no human being was giving me the answers that I needed. And so I remember just like, I need to pray. And of course, the only way I knew how to pray was as a Muslim, regardless of me questioning Islam. And I remember making this prayer, and wallahi, I always share this because this was the turning point in my faith and in my life. And I'm in sujood, and I remember just being stuck there. Being stuck, like physically, like I felt like I couldn't get up. And it was the first time that I actually went into a salah with an intention, not just to pray because we pray. I was praying because I needed Allah. Finally, I felt like it was the first time that I really had to ask him for something, because he had made everything else so easy. He blessed me with this talent. I got the scholarship. You know, all these great goals were met. And then here comes my test. And so in this prayer, that's when I was like, Allah, like I felt like I couldn't get up, and I just started begging Allah, Allah, I need guidance. I need to figure out what I'm doing in life. What's next? Because at that time I was hanging out with the wrong people, just not myself, you know? And subhanAllah, like soon after this prayer, the way that things started to happen in my life were just like, it made sense. And I knew that Allah was working in a way to bring me closer to him, closer to my faith, and help me realize what's more important. And that prayer, honestly, is what saved me. And I say that like, truthfully, like wallahi, like I would pay any amount of money to go back to the feeling that I had in that prayer, because that's when I felt like I became Muslim. I actually got to choose Islam. And we often, you know, hear about people converting and, you know, converting to Islam. But we really don't think about the fact that these people who convert to Islam get to choose it and fall in love with it. Versus when we are born into it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just Muslim because my family's Muslim, or we go to Sunday school and we learn how to pray. And everything is just, it's just natural, you know, but we don't ever get to truly fall in love with it. And so for me, that test, when Allah took away basketball, he was like, what are you going to choose? Your Islam or what the people want, or what you want people to see you as? And so alhamdulillah, man, for the test. And honestly, you know, what I want you all to take from me is keeping your salah close to you. We know how valuable our prayers are, right? And we know that once we stop making those prayers, we're considered an unbeliever. And it's true, because once you let go of that, that connection to Allah is gone. And so please, you know, whatever you're going through, whatever your tests are, keep that faith as an anchor, because it's hard. Being a Muslim is, yes, it's absolutely hard, but sometimes we make it hard, because Allah is just asking us to do simple things day to day, you know, but we do get caught up in the outside world. And it's innate, it's natural for a human to, you know, be tested and to go through things and to lose ourselves. But we have to realize the way life is set up right now, if you don't have faith, then how do you move? You know, how do you react to things? And so I think the beauty of Islam is that everything falls on intention. And there's no other faith, from my knowledge, that says if you intend to do something, you still get that good deed. That Allah knows exactly what's in our hearts. So if we go to bed and we intend to wake up for Fajr and we oversleep, we still get that blessing. Like, so let's really, really take a step back. Are we being Muslim? Are we being believers at every given moment that Allah is blessing us with? And, you know, through my tests, that's what I learned most, is to really keep Salah close, because that's what, honestly, that's what saved my life. So alhamdulillah, and may Allah protect us, and may Allah guide us, and may Allah allow us to be Muslim in every part of our life, regardless of who's watching, regardless of what we see, regardless of what we post, how we interact. May Allah keep us close to him, because times are scary. And if we're not holding each other accountable as Muslims, then who else will? So Jazakallah khairan. I hope and pray that if I said something good, it comes from Allah. And if I said something that was wrong or bad, it comes from me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Bilqis and Noor, for your inspiring stories. So now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. We have a few questions prepared, but if anyone watching would like to ask anything else, please leave them in the Q&A box. I believe there's a chat box below, and we will share those as well. So this is for Bilqis specifically. So we've heard stories about you meeting former President Obama. Can you share more about that experience and what that was like?
Yeah, so honestly, it was the craziest thing ever when I first I went there a few times, but the first time I went, I was a freshman in college. And very quickly, I'm going to share the story because it's actually funny. My mother calls me and she's like, "You have a letter from the White House." And I'm like, okay. It's probably one of those season greetings cards that everybody gets. I'm like, just throw it out like it's junk mail. She's like, "No, it has the golden seal on it and it's this." And I'm like, "You just want to open my mail, so go ahead and open the mail." So she opens the mail. She's like, "It's an invitation." And I'm like, "There's no way it's an invitation. For what?" So she's like, "Just call the number and RSVP." So I'm still thinking it's fake. I call this number and a very proper lady picks up the phone. She's like, "Hi, may I have your name?" And I'm like, give her my name. Then she asked for my social security number. And I'm like, "Wait, what? Why do you need so I'm immediately I'm taken aback, but I'm like, okay, but what is, she was like, "Well, if you're calling this number, then you're invited to the Ramadan feast." They called it a feast. It was funny. They called it a feast. And I'm like, "Oh, this is real?" And I'm like, 77655. Look, I spilled the beans on my social security. So they have to actually make sure that you're a legit person and do a background check and all this type of stuff. So 2 days later, I'm flying out to the White House. Get to the White House, you have to go through basically airport security to get in the White House. And when I get to the dining room where we're gonna have iftar, the usher is like, "Wow, you have the luckiest seat in the house." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" Okay. So they walk me to my seat, and there's a round table and there's nameplates for everybody. There's my name, and then literally right next to me, "Mr. President." I about lost my mind. I was like, "No, I'm not about to eat right next to," I'm just super excited. And at that time, you could still have your phones, because now you can't bring your phones in. So he makes his grand entrance. He goes to the podium and he's greeting everybody, and all of a sudden he's like, "And I just want to talk about Bilqis." And I'm like, I'll look up because the podium's right there. So now I have my phone. I'm taking pictures of it. I'm trying to take selfies of him. And he's like, "Bilqis, can you stand up?" Because he doesn't know who I am. So I stand up and he actually talked to me, and I was losing my mind. And then so finally when we sat down to eat, the food was terrible, by the way. It was some weird dry chicken, and it was awful. But he's like, "Bilqis," he said, I play." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "The next time you're in DC, we're gonna play one-on-one. We're gonna see who's the real champ." I said, "Mr. President, you are not ready for it." Was so funny. So anyway, years later, subhanAllah, I was able to go back. I actually played him in a shooting game in his own backyard on his own court, and I ended up beating him, which was nice. But it was a great experience. I mean, he was a real cool guy. He just felt super normal. It was so weird, but it was cool. Mashallah.
I'm sure not many people can say that they beat the president at a 1-1 game. But so for our next question, this is posed to both of you guys, so whoever wants to take it first. With breaking barriers, you obviously come up against brick walls. So what helped you get through the various obstacles and challenges that you faced in your respective challenges?
So I think that one of the biggest things that definitely helped me get through this was just having such an amazing, alhamdulillah, support system around me. Like if I didn't have like my mom next to me the whole time and like shielding me from whatever bad was going on, you know, this like whole situation could have been a lot worse for me. Like even like just mentally. So I think that was one of the biggest things that got me through those obstacles, was just having a great support system around me, which is like one of the things that like I want to give with Let Nor Run, because I understand that not everybody has that kind of support system, which is why it's difficult for people to come out and tell their stories and, you know what I mean, and try to make change. Not everyone can do that because not everyone has that support system. So that's just one thing that like that's like a part of Let Nor Run's mission, is just like hey, I'm here for you kind of thing.
Honestly, I'm going to piggyback off of Noor. It's the same thing. When I was going through that time of questioning hijab and being a Muslim, of course, I didn't really verbalize that exactly to my parents, but your parents know. They knew that I was struggling with that. So when I was finally able to kind of build up that courage and just tell my mom, like, look, I'm struggling. Both and my dad, they're like, we know. You know, and after I let that off my chest, the love again, and that love and support from your parents is irreplaceable. And outside of that, I'm good. Okay. Sorry. My internet keeps saying it's unstable. I'm sorry. Outside of that, it was honestly trying to pave a way for the young girls who were going to come after me. And I had to step outside of my selfishness, because there was a time where I was like, I can't play, so forget it. Like, I didn't have the energy to keep battling FIBA and trying to get in touch with them and, you know, just trying to figure out how to remove that rule. There was a lot of times where I wanted to quit, but then I would get tagged on social media by a young Muslim girl playing basketball, or, you know, at the time there was girls Noor's age back then who were reaching out like, you inspire me, I needed this. And so I was like, okay, I see why I'm doing it. So it was finding that purpose as well.
Okay, and Noor, what are your future goals, and how do you see yourself using the voice that you have created for yourself and the platform that you have now?
So I think that like I was saying, like with such a great support system, I was able to take advantage of that platform that I was given pretty quickly. And like, you know, try and build this initiative and try and like fight discrimination. And honestly, it was just by telling my story and getting my story like on I think it was actually a local newspaper that Senator Gavarone heard my story. So so like with my goals with Let Nor Run specifically right now and today is just making sports a more inclusive environment. So one thing that we're doing with the 5K is all the funds that are donated are going to be funneled back into the local public schools here in Toledo, so that way they can have sports hijabs. And I was speaking to the diversity and inclusion committee for the Toledo public schools, and I was just trying to like tell them about this, and they're like, well, what if we don't have that many hijabi athletes or that many Muslim girls that want to do sports? And for me, it's not necessarily about that. You know what I'm saying? So like if I know that my school has sports hijabs, you know what I mean? or is providing a hijab friendly uniform. So that way I don't have to go out of my way to make this crazy looking uniform work for me. You know what I mean? It honestly, it's a hassle, and I'm sure the police can relate to that. So I think that just the idea and just putting it out there, especially in public school sports, that it's accessible, it's here, you know what I mean? Like, you belong to this team just as much as everybody else. You're gonna get a uniform just like everyone else got a uniform. A uniform that you can wear just like everyone else did. So that's what we're working on right now, inshallah.
I can definitely relate to the crazy uniform piece, having run track at my own school. So just out of curiosity, do you plan on running at the collegiate level?
I don't right now. Yeah.
So next question. If you could go back, and this is for both of you guys, so if you could go back, would you change anything about the way that you responded or handled your situations?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think that maybe I could have changed. I think my perspective early on when I was decided to go ahead and try to go head to head with FIBA. At first, you know, what happened was, of course, FIBA cut off all communication. And I met up with another sister named Indira, who had recently started wearing the hijab and played professionally before she wore hijab, and then started to wear hijab and then found out she couldn't play anymore. And she actually invited me to work with her on this petition to go ahead and get signatures so that FIBA would be kind of, we would hope, push, you know, to kind of reform the rule. But at first I was really just apprehensive about everything. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. No, that's not gonna. And I was really just, I don't know, intimidated by such, this is a powerhouse. And yeah, I wish I would have had a positive mindset when I first learned that I couldn't play. Instead of kind of, I didn't waste time, but I didn't think that it was gonna happen. So I was ready to just let it go. So I feel like if I would have jumped on things earlier, and again, I didn't know what to do at the time, but I don't know, maybe if I had a different mindset instead of kind of sulking and grieving, that maybe things would have went faster, or change would have been made faster. But Allah is the best of planners. Alhamdulillah.
Actually, this is a difficult question, I think, for me to answer. I was trying to think about it while Bilqis was talking, and honestly, alhamdulillah, I don't think I would change very much about how I did things. And I think, again, that just came with, like, I'm so blessed to have like a great relationship with my parents and like with the people around me. So I did take my time. I took it slow, and I did do some grieving and sulking. But I think in a way that was healthy. You know, you need to take some time and take a step back and think about what's happening. A lot of the times in the beginning, it was just like I was just grinding and I was trying to like make things happen, you know. And then there was like moments where like I needed to step back. I needed to just like think about what was happening, and like, you know.
All right, and for next question, how do you feel motivated to keep going?
I think like what Bilqis was saying is just remembering the next generation. My little cousin Raneem, she has a poster, a Let No Run poster in her room, and you know, just like thinking about that, or thinking about my little sister who said she wanted to become a journalist after all this was happening to me, because she was seeing me being interviewed all the time. She wanted to be a person that does the interviews. Just like noticing that younger girls are absorbing what you're doing, and they're noticing, you know what I mean? They know what you're saying. They know, not the promises you're making, but like the strides that you're trying to take. They know your intentions, you know? So, a lot of times I feel like I talk about like my dreams, and what I want to see Letting Her Run become and how I want to fight, so, and they hear about those dreams. So I think it's just my duty to see those dreams through, so that way it's so much easier for them. My aunt, she actually ran at a collegiate level. And she honestly, she faced a very similar situation at her school. She had to figure out how to figure out her uniform and like all this. And this was years ago. I think she's like, that's probably like 20 years ago when she was in high school. So just like thinking about that like she was doing the work back then. It's just like you gotta keep going. So yeah, it's like remembering that there's always someone after you. Like you gotta plant your seeds and you won't see the tree grow, but the next generation will.
I think she answered that well. I don't have anything to add.
So our next question is directed to you, but please. They asked, was your mother ever worried that your fame would take over and that you could have lost your dean becoming such a high-profiled athlete?
I would say my mother was worried way before I even made a name for myself. And again, my mother converted to Islam at a not a young age. She was around 24. And again, the way she learned her Islam was black and white. There was no gray areas. She wasn't strict. She wasn't hardcore, but she was raised a Christian. And she knew that she questioned a lot, growing up in her faith. And she's been through so much, right before she became Muslim, she had gone through so much as a young woman. And I think, of course, as all parents do, they want to protect you from the things that they've experienced. And so, early on when I was first starting to wear hijab, I struggled with modesty. I struggled with wearing the hijab the traditional way, which is, covering the neck and the chest area or whatever. And I would kind of push the envelope a little bit my teenage years. So she was worried about me. So when I went off to college, she had written me a letter and put it in my suitcase without me knowing. And she basically said, to read, I don't know verbatim, but I remember to read your Quran every day and to keep up with your prayers. And she said, I'm making dua for you. And subhanAllah, like I read that letter when because I found it as soon as I opened my suitcase, and I'm like, she's so crazy. Like I'm all like, whatever, like what does she think I'm gonna do? SubhanAllah, like everything that was kind of in that letter I experienced, that my faith was tested. And I'm telling you, the thing that saved me was my mother's dua, and even my both of my parents, of course. And so she had that worry before, and that worry is valid. And so when our parents, even you all at this young age, I'm not that much, I'm old, I'm 30, but I remember being your age, and I know it's hard. Again, I mentioned it earlier, and I know that keeping up with your faith is a test because of the things that we see day to day on our social media, on our TikToks, and especially as women. I know men struggle with things, but as women, we have so much to battle day to day. The standard of beauty, this idea that we have to have this perfect life, this idea that we want to be like these influencers that we see. It's not all peachy creamy. It's not all beauty behind the camera. And I think one way Islam helps us and protects us as women is that we don't necessarily have to battle these standards and these images, because our beauty is concealed and it's hidden. And, Allah is actually being merciful through the things that he asks from us, right? And so, again, you're going to go through your tests and trials, but just know that your parents' du'as are working. And, I pray that you all hold tight regardless of what you all go through and what you see and what affects you. But alhamdulillah, my mother stood by me, of course, through the thick and the thin, my abu as well. And so I'm grateful for my mother. I love her.
And finally, this question is for Noor. Do you have any plans for an initiative to encourage Muslim teens nationwide to participate in a 5K and to raise money against discrimination? I think this is in reference to Let Noor Run.
Yeah, we do have a 5K right now. And the 5K is actually, well, the registration for the 5K is to raise money for a local nonprofit organization here in Toledo, Ohio, known as the House of Innovation. And, Let Noor Run's mission isn't to fight discrimination and injustices in sports, but it's fighting discrimination and injustice and doing what we love. Because I'm a firm believer in passion and in hard work, and you work for what you get. And if you love what you're doing in whatever profession you're in, you shouldn't be stopped in your tracks. So this House of Innovation, they house these young or actually any creative minds and creative ideas, and they provide state-of-the-art resources open to the community so that way they can come and create. And in a way, this is creating inclusion in all industries by providing these resources and mentors to the community. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, which is why we're so proud to be supporting it. And then another part of the 5K is to, like I said before, to raise money for sports hijabs for the local inner city schools here in the Toledo area. So that way sports can continue to become a more inclusive environment. And I think that this way it'll encourage more hijabi athletes to go and try out for the teams and, try to do sports. I remember when I guess I'm in high school now. So like going through high school and middle school and even elementary, I was always the only Muslim girl on the team other than my sister. And right now my sister is my best friend. Not only because we grew up together, because she's the only one that ever really understood me, The Muslim girls in my community, they didn't do sports, so I couldn't really relate to them too much. And then the non-Muslim girls, I couldn't relate to either. So it was my sister that was by me. And we were able to build this character of leadership and this confidence that I think every girl and everyone should experience. And sports is such a beautiful way to gain that. So inshallah, through this 5K, we're working on making sports a more inclusive environment for everyone. Thank you.
You're on mute, Sama.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a perfect point to leave off. So this concludes our last session for tonight and this weekend. Thank you to Bilqis and Noor for your time and your words of wisdom. You guys are also inspiring, inshallah. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who has attended our amazing sessions today. And inshallah, you all gain something from it. Tomorrow we will be concluding our weekend with a ice cream social at Noor and the amphitheater from 12 to 2 p.m. So be sure to attend that for some socially distanced fun and for an opportunity to kind of hang out. So thank you all to everyone who's joined, and inshallah we'll see you all tomorrow.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having us.